Is the U.S. still the last to fail? I think if you're talking about the major economies, that the highest probable outcome is the U.S. will be the last man standing. Just like Egypt. If you guys didn't watch that whiteboard video that I did, I'd strongly suggest it. The title, I did it about a month ago. The title was "The Collapse of the American Empire," something like that. It had that in the title, and it was just where I was going through a thought experiment as to how the American empire may collapse, because people always use they look at it through the lens of the Roman Empire or maybe the British Empire. But if you look at it through the lens of the Egyptian Empire, which is what I did in the whiteboard video, to me it actually makes a little more sense. It seems to be more similar to what we are going through today. So just the quick version of it is Ramses III was the last like big pharaoh guy, and the year was 1175 BC. I have the dates. I have the dates for this one because I actually did a whiteboard video on it. The African gold guy king, I didn't do a whiteboard video on that, so I don't have my facts, or I don't have all the dates and numbers on that one. But I do remember the dates and numbers on this one. So 1175 BC, Ramses III. Egypt was the major powerhouse, right? They were the dominant global superpower, if you will. The dominant empire, and they had their nemesis. In fact, the nemesis of the world at that time, the known world, was this group called the Sea Peoples, and they're badass. They were so badass that a lot of people thought they were aliens, or they just weren't human. And what they did is they just kind of sailed down the coastline there in what is now what I guess southern Europe, and then kind of the coastline of Greece, and then what would be Turkey, and then kind of down towards Egypt, and they went through Cyprus. And they completely wiped out every single town, every city, every civilization, wiped them out. And they didn't just steal everything and take the people as slaves. They literally took everything and they burnt the city to the ground. They destroyed it, just nothing left, just ashes. So at the time, Egypt, just like the United States now, they imported a lot of the goods that they used in the economy. So the Sea Peoples come down, and Ramses III has this plan, and he executes the plan to perfection because he knows the Sea Peoples are going to attack him next. So he has them come. He kind of channels them through the Nile River Delta, which is where it opens up to the sea. Sure enough, they bring the boats down, and he completely wipes them out, just gone. So then at this time, Ramses, he's patting himself on the back. He's like, I defeated the nemesis of the world, the Sea Peoples. And all of the citizens of Egypt are like, yes, it's the God is favoring the Egyptian Empire. The Egyptian Empire is going to live on forever. And because we defeated the Sea People, and everyone's cheering, everyone's partying like it's 1999. A few decades later, Egypt, done, gone, collapse. Why? Because they're the last man standing. So what happened is all of the Sea Peoples wiped out all of their trading partners. So yeah, it's great that they're the only ones to survive, but they can't survive very long because they're so dependent upon the lifeline of all these goods that were coming in from all of these other cities, countries, and empires that they traded with. Exactly like the United States today. Think about what would happen if just tomorrow all of the imports stopped. Nothing from China, nothing from Vietnam, nothing from Thailand, nothing from Taiwan, nothing from Europe, nothing from Africa, nothing from South America, nothing, zero. How long would the United States last? Think about it. Answer, not long, not long. So my point is, yes, I do think the U.S., the probability is highest that the U.S. will be the last the last man standing, but it doesn't prevent the empire from collapsing. In fact, it might even hasten the collapse of the American empire. Now, just to give you some insight there as to why the probability is high, is because 60-70% of global transactions are settled in dollars, especially for energy, food. And I think we're going into an energy crisis and possibly a food crisis as well, going into this long-term commodity super cycle that we always talk about on this channel. And the countries, and we can see this playing out right in front of our own eyes, the countries that are short on dollars, they are screwed. They're screwed because they have to print their own currency to buy the dollars that they need to either pay down their debt or buy oil, like Turkey, as an example. And the United States is in a rare position where they can actually print the currency to buy all the stuff that is settled in dollars. So that's right now, that is their huge, huge advantage. I mean, if you're going into energy shortage or a food shortage where food and energy are settled in dollars, and think about how much of an edge it is to be able to print that. China can't do that. Europe can't do that. The United States is the only country that can. Now, who else can print dollars? And you guys know the answer to this. In fact, who is much more efficient at printing dollars than the United States, even if the government got in the game of directly creating currency units intentionally, right? Where that was their stated objective. It's the Eurodollar system. It's the banks, the banksters. But you see what's going to happen is in this environment, most likely, and we could see the opposite, but most likely in an environment where global economic activity is decreasing, the banksters in the Eurodollar system are going to be creating fewer loans. They're going to be extending less credit. Why? Counterparty risk goes up. So if counterparty risk goes up, loans go down. That means dollars, the amount of dollars created by the banking system on net balance plummets, you see? And let's remember that the banking system, at least a portion of those loans, went for productive purposes, for creating goods and services, where I can almost assure you that if 100% of the increase or the need for dollars is met by the central planners and the authoritarians, right, how well do you think those currency units are going to be distributed? Do you think they're going to be distributed to entities that are producing stuff? Most likely not. And I mean, if you guys follow me on Twitter, I sent out a tweet today on how the central banks now are going woke. So it was a tweet from the Federal Reserve where they say that they're now, they're having this big conference that's being put on by the Canadian Central Bank, of course. And the conference is how the central bankers can be more inclusive, whatever those stupid buzzwords they always use. It's the same three that they basically got from Klaus. Here, let me look at my Twitter and I'll tell you. It's just the script that they all get from Klaus. And they've got they retweeted like this online flyer that they made. Yeah, it's the Conference on Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. Those are, whenever you hear people use those words, you know that they're drinking the Klaus Kool-Aid, that's for sure. So my point is what happens when these central banks are now, or the central bank, the Fed, is responsible for creating all these dollars that need to circulate to keep the whole system from imploding. And they're going woke. Where do you think those new dollars are going to go? They're most likely going to go to all the wokesters. And then the corporations are going to have to be more and more woke just so they can get the credit or get credit cheaper. And then what's that going to do to productivity? So now we're lending based on your view of how many genders there are, right? It's not based on merit. It's not based on how efficient you are or your ability to pay back the loan. It's not based on your ability to create goods and services. It's just based on your ideas or what you say your ideas are as far as how many genders. If you only think there's two genders, oh no, you're not getting a loan. No way. No way. You only think there's two genders? What are you, some sort of domestic terrorist? Is what they're going to say. So think about the level of inefficiency. Think about what happens to productivity globally, once the extension of credit goes from the banks in the Eurodollar system to the central banks that are adopting this woke narrative. And remember, their balance sheets are infinite. They don't care about being paid back. At least the balance sheets of the banksters in the Eurodollar system, at least they can't have negative equity, right? They're not infinite in that way. They have a P&L. They have to be paid back. So they have an incentive to lend to people that are actually going to be able to pay them back with interest. Or the central banks have no incentive for that whatsoever. None. And if you want proof of that, just look what they did during 2020. Remember when they were buying corporate debt? Look at what they do in quantitative easing. Do they only buy bonds if they know they're going to get a good return on those bonds? No. They're an indiscriminate buyer. Why? Because they have an infinite balance sheet. They can have negative equity, and it doesn't even matter. So, again, my point there is that, well, I guess I went way off on a tangent, but hopefully you guys can get some value there, because I think it's very important that we need to think about these ideas. And by the way, if you didn't know, the Fed just came out and started a trial of their own central bank digital currency. That's right. This is not speculation anymore. This is not some sort of tinfoil hat, but we're way, way past that, to the point where they're actually doing, the Federal Reserve, right now, if you don't believe me, Google it. As soon as we get off this live stream, the Fed has started a trial of their central bank digital currency. It's happening right now as we speak. So, I mean, if you combine everything that I've talked about here over the last 20 minutes on these tangents, and I'd suggest writing that stuff down, those main talking points, and just thinking through how that would play out on your own. Think through what the probabilities are. If you think that I'm right, that they are going to implement a central bank digital currency, and that's going to allow them to extend credit, and they're going to go more and more woke, how do you set up your portfolio accordingly, right? If you think that the United States is going to be the last person standing, but that could be bad for the U.S., not good, how do you set up your portfolio? Because this is what it all goes back to. And that's why I try to, or I sometimes allow myself to go off on these tangents.